So you said you own your own business, but I know from our conversations prior that you used to get work. You worked with an agency that I think provided you with referrals.
Yes. I've worked for
Um,
a few different ones, but the one I worked at the longest that I had a really good experience with was Lutheran Family Services, which is a really great agency. I give them huge props for all the things that they do. But that's probably my biggest one that I had the most experience with.
okay. So what made you decide to start your own business?
I kind of as I got so when I started therapy, like when I did like IFP, I got to know a lot of really good therapists. One in particular who's still a very good friend of mine. We used to keep in touch. She's moved out of state and whatnot, but she introduced the idea of you can do your own thing. Like I kind of heard about it like at school a little bit, but they don't really talk about that. They're more just like trying to teach you the material. And she talked about like, well, we're going to get, if you get this license, because she was also a social worker, like you get this independent license, you can diagnose your own clients, you can do your own thing. You don't have to, you can just kind of do whatever, because that's what she wanted to do. And so after I heard about that, it's like, well, that kind of sounds kind of nice, like to just have my own schedule and do what I want. And I didn't have kids at that point. So as that would be great for when I have children, like I can make sure I'm off at the right time to take care of them. And so as I went along and went to a few different agencies and got to Lutheran, my idea was I'm going to stay here until I feel comfortable enough to start my practice. And so COVID obviously hit, which then obviously kind of changed some plans because that messed up basically the whole system of how we do therapy. Because now there wasn't in person for a very, very long time. It was just like this, you and I talking on the computer. I would do my sessions this way all the time.
Prior to COVID?
After COVID happened. Before that, it was strictly office. Like I never doing telehealth sessions was not really a thing, not something
Really?
anyone really did. Most of the time because you didn't get paid well. Like insurance companies are very picky on what they pay, and in
Okay.
person was the way to go. But once COVID hit and everyone was at home, it's like, well, we got to do therapy. Like we can't just not do therapy. So they the ideas of telehealth came into practice, like Zoom and like Teams. All those things were kind of already in place, but then that they became the systems that we use to actually get to know clients. So once that started and I was at home, I was able to more efficiently see clients and do my work, which then allowed me time to figure out how to do a private practice. So I think it was August of 2020, I started to get ready for my practice. I made my business, got my name set up, and just started figuring out how to credential with the insurance companies, which just means I send them my information, answer, do all the paperwork or whatever, and they decide if they're willing to pay me. And so doing that work, it takes forever to do sometimes. So it allowed me to still do a job where I got paid, but then also do the work necessary to start my business. And so when I started officially in March of 2021, I had my credentialing was done. I had insurance companies that would pay me, and I basically switched over. And because I was so full, which not that's typically does not happen, like where you have clients that just all hop over. I had a lot of clients that did because they didn't have anywhere, they just didn't have a spot to go and they wanted to keep seeing me. So I already had like 15 clients off the bat and still was able to then bring more in as I went. So I had a good setup as it was. So I didn't really have like a loss of income,
Wow.
which does not happen very often. I was
I
very
bet not.
fortunate. So it's something I wanted to do, and I just had the right circumstances given to where I could start it up at my pace and be set to where then I could just start going right then and
But
there.
it sounds like you just kind of figured this all out. I mean, you got the idea from your friend, but then you just did everything, and that
Yes.
couldn't have been easy.
No, Justin helped me quite a bit. Luckily he did a lot of research and kind of knew how to work some of that and would let me know like you have to fill out this, you have to do this. And so then I did the work. He just helped me with the research and he introduced me to teams and taught me how to do it so that I could do telehealth sessions because that's what I mainly have done and still do honestly. Most of my clients are still telehealth at this point where I'm still on the video call with them. I only have a handful that actually come see me. So he kind of helped me with a lot of those things and supported me and like let me pay rent to a place for a while just so I could have an address to so insurance companies knew where I was to send their mail and whatnot to me and my checks and whatnot. So
You can
I
use your home address for that.
you can, but then it has, like, there's some companies require that to be public, because like Medicaid requires your address to be publicly seen because they're a public based insurance company because they're federal. And so then that means my address would be just available if clients were like, oh, who's a therapist in my area? I'm going to go to Medicaid's website. It's like, oh, boom, here's Taylor. No, she lives at this address, but she does telehealth. It's like, I don't want people to know where I live. I'm very careful about confidentiality with my business. Like, my address is quiet. I don't use my own phone for anything. I have a strictly office phone with an office number. I have my own email that's separate from everything. It's almost like two lives. Like, I have this set up for this life and then my regular normal life. So
Wow. Okay. So I have so many questions. So
that's fine.
do you have like a physical office for anybody that wants to meet you in person, or do you like meet at a coffee shop, or how do you do that? Or do you go to their house?
I have an office. I have done many things in the past. So, like, when I did IFP, I had to go to people's homes. That was basically a requirement, is I come to you. So I would go to houses or I'd go to coffee shops, wherever they wanted to meet. But I didn't have a home office space that they would come to me at. Just because a lot of them have tough circumstances, a lot of poverty, a lot of just so many appointments and things going on. It's like you can't squeeze in driving somewhere else. So we would accommodate by coming to them. And also there's some things where, like, oh, I'm in your house, I get to know you better, we can build better rapport, which is partially true. It did work in that way for a while. And then I did a small thing in Omaha for a little while. I didn't do that job for very long, but that one also, I would go to people's houses. Uh, and that, again, same reasons: lost trauma, poverty, just easier for me to go there. So I've done that, and I don't mind doing it. I like having my own setup though better, because like all my stuff is there. I can like pull out handouts and easily. I have like all my fidget stuff for the kiddos to mess with. Everything's just kind of set up in a nice space. I also feel safe doing that. Not that I never felt unsafe in a home. I've never had a bad circumstance. But there's always that risk when you're going to a person's house, that there's like potential things could get not so great, and that's just kind of part of the job. But so I like having my office set up, and I also like working from home too a lot, actually. So
So, okay, so you do have an office
yes, right.
outside of your home,
Yeah,
and you're paying rent for that.
I am. Yes.
Okay. Um, but it's not necessarily something you use that often because a lot of it's telehealth.
Yeah. So I did have a bigger office, but I downgraded to a smaller one because it was cheaper, because I wasn't using that space a lot. I didn't need to have a giant office just to use it one day a week. So yeah.
Okay. And IFP, I know what that's kind of like an agency, but what does that stand for?
Intensive family preservation therapy.
Okay, so like if I had a child and they had trauma, the state of Nebraska might use IFP to assign me a therapist.
Kinda. So if you got IFP, it's either because you have a child that is on probation, that is just a few steps away from potentially getting sent to a group home or juvenile detention because they're just not doing what they're supposed to do. Or if you're DHHS, where you have CPS there, it's we're struggling, things aren't working, and we're getting worried that maybe the home is not going to work for having the kids there. They might have to go to foster care. It's like we only are brought into circumstances that the last ditch effort, basically, to keep the family in the same home together. So it's more so than just your kid has trauma, right? Like, my job now outside of IFP, that's more when I'm like, oh, my kid has trauma, I'm going to bring them to a therapist, and they come to me. Or an agency says, hey, go see Taylor. Like, one agency that I have a connection with is the Child Advocacy Center, which is a very wonderful facility. I can rave about them. They're such a wonderful place. But they do forensic interviewing for kids that have experienced trauma. So if a kiddo has been abused, neglected, they go there, they ask them the questions in a safe, comfortable environment, send it to the police, state, to review and to determine if there's been abuse or whatnot. And then they give referrals for therapists. So they know me, I have information for them, and so they will give my name to clients sometimes as an option for them.